Peace and love, people. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Drillosophy, the video series where we excavate the deeper meaning behind some bars from your favourite artists in the UK. I'm your boy Revs, that's short for Reveal.
Welcome back to Drillosophy. My name's Ciaran and This week we're going to be looking at how Aristotle's concept of catharsis can help us understand the importance of storytelling in music.
We're going to be thinking about how lyrics can be a great way of dealing with our feelings and emotions as we conduct therapy in the trap. So what exactly is therapy in the trap? Well, in certain situations and environments, it can be difficult for us to talk about feelings and emotions and to fully express ourselves.
A couple of years ago, I interviewed Kenny Allstar, the BBC One Extra radio DJ, and he told me that he saw his role as someone that hosts rappers on his freestyle platform and on his radio show as that of a therapist.
We deal with real powers over here at Mixtape Madness.
Because rappers come on, they say their lyrics, and then they feel better for it.
You gotta teach the nation wagwan.
Man, back it out and then shove it in that duffel bag what the gun is in.
I also interviewed the spoken word artist and activist George the Poet, and he told me that he feels like storytelling is a form of survival.
I know that certainly for me, I've had experiences and situations in my life that it's been very helpful for me to be able to revisit them with a bit of distance later on through things like lyric writing, and that's kind of what we're trying to get to for this episode. And just because we are going to be discussing some quite sensitive topics this episode, we're going to go over for a word from our boy Franklyn. Franklyn, what's good?
Yo, what's going on? It's your boy Franklyn. I'm a youth worker, so for years I've worked in spaces like prisons, now in hospitals, working with young people who have been victims of violence, for example. I'm also a journalist, so I write about issues like youth violence and criminal justice in spaces like the BBC and The Guardian, and I'm also a rapper myself, so I write about all of these issues in music, because music is so powerful, as we know.
My Shinobi flow, I mean you know me, yo. I should be signed to OVO, I need that Sony door. If we're going toe to toe, I leave them comatose. Forever skippy with the flow, because I know the ropes.
Today's video is going to touch upon some real themes, man. You know that Drillosophy, the whole premise of it is to take theory and to apply it to real life. And the reality is that, you know, a lot of people have suffered with issues like loss and so on and so forth. So my encouragement to you is that if you feel like this video might be too much for you to cope with, do click away. Even if you feel like starting it, don't feel like you have to stay for the entire duration if it gets too much. And also there's some resources in the video description that can direct you to some assistance if you feel like you need to talk to someone.
Could I tell you what's going on out here? It's mad.
One really rich example recently of storytelling in music as a way of exploring real-life traumatic events is that of Ambush Eastenders.
Have I been away so long? What's going on? I heard John's got a youth with Jade. You know saying Jade used to be with Tom?
In the song, Ambush uses 3 real-life examples where 2 people have fallen out over a girl, leading to extremely tragic events, in some cases some people being killed, and he uses these stories as a way of explaining the pettiness that sometimes comes from disagreements that take place between young men as a result of pride, jealousy, love and hate.
Beef over gal is mad. I told you.
Beef over gal is mad. Yo, it's your boy Bush Buzzwell, you already know what's going on. Big shout out to Drillosophy, big shout out to Roadworks. What am I saying? Eastenders, big and serious. I was just trying to let people know that some things are just not worth it. You know what I'm saying? In the hood, things go 0 to 100 real quick. Things get mixed up, wires get crossed, and people don't actually know what goes on in situations. But I was just trying to give an honest perspective to let just people know how real and how silly things can get over trivial things. It's not worth it, you feel me? Beef over gal is mad.
Beef over gal is mad.
Now the first lyric that I'd like to talk about this week is from an artist called Pop Smoke. He actually tragically passed away earlier this year, so I'd just like to start by saying rest in peace to the young brother. The lyric that we're going to be looking at is from a track called PTSD. We're going to examine exactly what that means in a bit, but for now, the lyric.
My little homie died and I ain't drop a tear. I just rolled a split and put it in the air.
my lil homie died and I ain't drop a tear. Now you could interpret it as Pop Smoke saying that he just doesn't care over the death of his young friend, but I don't think that's the case. The fact that the track is titled PTSD, and that stands for post-traumatic stress disorder, which is a condition that we can sometimes develop when we've experienced pain or trauma ourselves. And later on in the track, Pop Smoke actually confirms this when he says,
I'll be spoiling myself so I can ease the pain.
I'll be spoiling myself just to ease the pain. He's talking about going on shopping sprees to try and numb the pain. So what I think Pop Smoke is really talking about when he says that he didn't shed a tear is that he feels numb and he feels emotionless. Now, PTSD is something that people can develop and it affects everyone in a different way. I've personally experienced PTSD myself, and I know exactly what Pop Smoke is talking about. Sometimes when you experience loss or you experience a number of losses, you start to feel a numbness and you start to feel like your emotions are locked away inside you and they're very difficult to think about or to talk about.
In episode 1 of Drillosophy, we talked about Plato's Cave. Now, Plato's Cave was written about in something called Plato's Republic, in which he describes the perfect society. But he thinks that in the perfect society, we shouldn't have music, we shouldn't have poetry, and we shouldn't have performance, because if we experience these things, we'll feel too emotional and then we'll go and act in an irrational way. But Plato had a student called Aristotle, another very famous Greek philosopher, who disagreed with Plato, and he wrote a book called the Poetics. The Poetics has basically formed the blueprint for storytelling in the modern age. Aristotle says that storytelling and performance and poetry and music is a good thing. When we go to the theatre, when we go to the cinema now, when we experience music and poetry, that is a positive thing for us, it's a therapeutic thing. And he called this idea catharsis. And catharsis is this idea of purgation, of getting rid of negative emotions as a result of experiencing stories.
So when Aristotle talks of catharsis as performing the function of purgation or allowing us to purge negative emotions or feelings that we're having, I think this is key in what we're saying to linking it into writing lyrics, because by understanding the situations that we're in and revisiting them with a bit of distance, we're able to look at the situation as a whole, and that enables us to maybe move on from that situation, and those feelings that we were feeling at the time still exist in that piece of writing. They still exist in the moment of time and emotions and thoughts that we've captured on that piece of paper, on that track, on that music video. So that's where I think it fits directly into this idea of catharsis serving a function for society in allowing us to purge some of our negative emotions and thoughts. Now, one of the ways that I personally found that I was able to revisit things with a bit of distance was from writing lyrics.
Negative energy's never the best of me, but I'm feeling mentally scarred in desperate need of a remedy.
Because that's what lyrics are. It's you telling a story, you telling your story, you commenting on someone else's story. And when we write things, we take control of that situation in a way that perhaps we weren't able to when we were experiencing it. So we're able to slow it down, we're able to replay it, we're able to place things in different positions and think about them differently. And for me personally, writing lyrics became a form of therapy.
At the moment, we're thinking a lot about the theme of home because we're all stuck under lockdown. One of my favourite songs of the last year is Home by Knucks.
Made in a manner. I take off my D-square top that I rock and I place on a hanger. Just touch home from the motive. Text get home safely to Anna. I see man I've got plenty to say when I'm out, but they never ever say it when they gang up.
In the song, Knucks describes the story of a 17-year-old young man living at home with his mum, feeling trapped, and going to a party. And at that party, his friend ends up stabbing someone.
Then out of the blue, when I put it in his right hand, then he dipped my man right in the stomach.
What's interesting about this story is that there are a lot of rap songs that explore stabbings and talk about people being hurt. but Knucks gives us a window into the vulnerable side of the main character.
Big man at 17, can't be stuck up my hole no more. Mum saying stuff about opening up, but that's what the bros are for.
One of those things is that he says, Mum tells me to open up more, but that's what the bros are for. Now, a lot of young men and men in general don't open up to people and find it difficult to express their emotions.
Mum told me come home some days, but Tuesday I never did go. Wait, Tuesday I never did.
Home is a really good example of Aristotle's idea of catharsis because it gives us as a viewer and a listener a window into how the main character might feel going through this series of events. One of those things is that the main character concedes to the fact that he was only bluffing when he was confronting the guy at the party.
One got a ching man, I was just bluffing, but I can't just stand there discussing.
And another one is that he concedes to throwing up on a car bonnet when he's running away from the scene of the crime.
Got man running, on my life I taste vomit. 10 toes to the Benz, man I ended up throwing up on the bonnet.
These are both things that give us a window into feeling empathy towards the main character, and therefore that is a form of catharsis. It's us as a viewer seeing a piece of art and feeling something as a result of that story being told, which is a positive thing in Aristotle's mind.
The next track I'd like to talk about is a track called My Story by Krept and Konan.
Came from radio, it was late. Left the car, went straight to my gate.
And in particular, I'd like to look at Konan's verse, which is a very, very personal account of an incident that took place where he was the victim of a home invasion and his stepfather was killed.
How the hell did I get in this? Trying to hold the door, but it's coming off the hinges. Somebody wake me from this dream now. Then I hear a gunshot and my mum scream out.
So first of all, I'd like to salute this young man for speaking so frankly and so honestly about his feelings and his emotions, and doing so in a way that shows vulnerability, because that's a very brave thing to do, and to me that's actually true strength. Because I think that coming from a certain environment, sometimes people have the wrong idea when it comes to speaking about feelings, and people are sometimes reluctant to do so honestly, and they feel like they need to put on a fake front. That's kind of what we refer to as being toxic masculinity.
Is this how my life ends? Nowhere to run, no place to hide in. Carl ran out of the room trying to fight him. 2 more gunshots, everything's silent.
In the song, Konan's talking about feeling afraid, feeling confused, not knowing what was happening. It's a very, very real account of events. In an interview regarding the track, he said that I had to relive all these memories and completely take myself back to that place and the nightmare of what happened. It's really helped me through the process. Watching it back was just mad, and when I released it, it was like relief flooding through me that maybe this was going to be all over. That's that same process of catharsis functioning as purgation. Now, there's also a lot of academic research to support this idea that lyric writing can serve as a legitimate form of therapy for those of us for whom more conventional methods of therapy might not be accessible. By speaking on our own pain and re-examining our own story, just like Konan has done, that can be a gateway into talking. It certainly was for me. So I had a lot of experiences when I was younger that I found hard to make sense of. And one of the places that I found was in my music. From listening to music and understanding certain situations and being given that context, that distance allows you to have, I was able to re-examine certain things from my past and write about it eventually. And writing about certain things and having almost like a record of your thoughts and emotions at the time, that can be a very helpful thing if there are difficult things that you want to examine. And if there's one thing I want you guys to remember from the stuff I'm saying, is that it's okay to talk. It's okay to talk because we've all been through pain. And sometimes it seems like there aren't places where we can talk about that, or it seems like if we do speak about it, then it might not be taken the way that we intend it. But you have to talk, you have to let it out. Otherwise, everything's going to stay inside of you, and that can lead to a lot of negative stuff, and we don't want that. We want to purge it.
Now that we've taken you through some ideas about how catharsis works and how lyric writing and storytelling can be a really positive therapeutic thing in music and for us as listeners, we're going to hand you over to Franklyn to have some final words.
You know what? I gotta start rounding this up by sending out a big shout out to man like Knucks, to man like Ambush, to the Krept and Konans of the world. In fact, to everyone doing this music thing and injecting real life stories and showing our perspectives in music is so important. But you know what? Far more importantly than music is the well-being of young people. As a youth worker, I care deeply about young people. We all do. We want to make sure you're good. And so please do be mindful of how you're feeling. Part of my advice would be try not to consume things that might trigger you. Be mindful of how certain things make you feel. So like if listening to certain things like bring up intense feelings within you, maybe even of anger, then maybe you want to cut down your consumption of certain things. If you feel like you need to speak to someone about any of the themes that have arisen, themes of loss, themes of pain, trauma, PTSD, then please try and think of any appropriate adult that you can take such concerns to. If there are any services that you can engage with locally, mentorship schemes or youth clubs that you can go to, charities like Young Minds, where there are like masses of information about mental health, then I'd encourage you to take up the opportunity. Sometimes everyone needs someone to talk to or seek some guidance from, you know. Follow the Roadworks network via the website, and in the video description link there's going to be a continual development of further resources that can supplement kind of what's been spoken about in the videos. So my encouragement to you is look after yourselves, and take care of yourselves, because that's important.
I just want to say a personal thank you to all of you that have been on this journey with us today, because I realise it's a really deep thing that we've gone through. I personally started writing journalism as a way of making sense of my experiences and my stories. So for me, catharsis means writing and journalism, but for you it might mean something different.
And that about wraps up for this week's episode of Drillosophy, guys. Thanks for joining us. We hope you found the information useful and interesting. Take care of yourselves and others, and we'll see you next week for another episode of Drillosophy. Peace.
With me, it's never just some lyrics on the beat, but this one is specific for the streets. This is for my brothers in the bing on the wing. I'm just praying that they give them their release. Yeah, this is for the trill and the deceased. We just want to breathe, man. The grief got us tired of the drillings and the beef. Saying, please don't take us too early, and pray we make it to 30. Real talk, Franklyn.
Yo, just before you go, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and check out the link below for the resources that we'll be putting up on our website. Peace out.